Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty, I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life." Has it been a normal Sunday for you so far? Did you get up at the same time you probably do every Sunday and go through the same routine of getting ready and coming here to church? Did you find your seat in your normal spot? How many of you do that? You like to sit in your normal spot, at least a normal area? You have your normal place there. We've sung some hymns to God. We've prayed together. Now it's time for an amazing, awe-inspiring message, right? That's normal. That happens every week, right? And then maybe after church you have a normal routine. Maybe there's a certain place you go to eat, or you go home and you change and do certain things. A lot of us, our days can kind of become routine and kind of just go through a normal flow. And, I was hoping last Sunday would just be normal. I was hoping it'd just be a normal Sunday, but came here and I got lots of happy birthdays. Lots of people reminded me I'm getting older. If you haven't heard, last Sunday, it was my birthday, and I turned 14,610. days old. That was how many days old I was last Sunday, 14,610. And when you get to my age, you start to reflect a little bit on your life and all the days that you have lived and the days that might be in front of you. The average life expectancy for someone in the United States is 28,760 days. If you do it in years, it's just under 79 years old is the average life expectancy in the U.S. But when you look at it in days, it looks a little different, doesn't it? I'm over halfway there, at almost 15,000 days in my life. And I was reflecting back on that and thinking about how many of those days were forgettable. How many of those days I don't remember. There are some days I remember my wedding. I remember when my children were born. I remember some great celebrations, some wonderful times. I remember some tough days, some difficult days, the days my grandparents died. Some of those days stand out in my mind, but out of my 14,617 days that I have lived, a majority of them I don't remember. And that caused me to reflect a little bit on the significance of each day of our life. And we've been doing a series this month of what if questions and kind of dreaming and visioning of things that God might have in front of us. And my what if question that I thought of for today is, what if today is your last day on earth? What if today is your last day on earth? And I chose that question for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was not to be morbid. I didn't want us to, I'm not trying to focus on our death, like this is our last day. But I think it's important for us to not ignore death, right? Death is a part of life. It happens to all of us. All of us will have that last day on this earth. And so I don't want us to ignore that, because if we ignore that, we might just live every day like it's a normal routine day. We may forget that we have a last one, and so we might want to make the most out of each day that is in front of us. And so it's not to just focus on our death, but actually I chose that question because it's an important question. I bet most of us have taken that question seriously. In a sense, we've wondered, what happens at the end of life? What happens in the next life? Is there a next life? And we ask questions like, what is meaning and purpose in this life? And so that's kind of the idea of what I want us to think about and work with this morning, is think about, what if today is the last day? Can we work through that and wrestle with that a little bit and not ignore it? I also chose that because sometimes as I preach, I like to preach about growing in our discipleship, helping us take those next steps and growing in how we follow Jesus. But I also want us to remember, and I need to remember, that I hope there are weeks where there's someone here who hasn't chosen to follow Jesus yet. they're still wrestling with that question of whether this Christian faith works for them or not. And they're still thinking about life and death and the meaning and all those things. And so we need to talk about that from time to time, because there might be someone here that still needs to talk about that and work through those kind of questions in their lives. And so I want us to look at that question. What if today is your last day? Would that fill your life with peace, or would that fill your life with worry and with fear? And so that's what we're going to look at. And we're going to look at the book of Revelation, which is one of my favorites. I love the book of Revelation. Did a wonderful class in seminary on it, really digging into it. It's a book written by the disciple John. He had a vision. A dream. One thing to learn, it's revelation. Some people call it revelations, plural. It's not, it's singular. It's one revelation that God gave to him, and he wrote it down for us. And a lot of what John is seeing and trying to describe is very symbolic. It's trying to show us something that he can't quite get his finger on what exactly it means, so he describes it in pictures and symbols. And so we have to wrestle and dig into it. And that's why I love Revelation, because you have to work at it to understand what it is John is trying to communicate, what God's communicating to us through John. And so I want us to do that with this passage here, which is John seeing a vision of a new heaven and a new earth. The old ways are passing away and something new is coming. And in the very first verse, he says this new heaven, new earth is coming, and there is no sea. Which that vision of no sea, for some of you might be a bummer if you like the beach or you like water sports. You might be bummed that there's no sea in the new heaven and new earth, but that's not really exactly what John is trying to talk about. What he wants us to recognize is, what does the sea represent? And if you think about trying to put yourself into the shoes of someone in first century Israel, how would they view the sea? When they look at the sea, to them, it's uncontrollable. You know, they can't control the sea. It destroys things. It's destructive. People die at sea. It's unknown. It's kind of this chaos idea. It brings a lot of fear into the lives of the people of Israel at that time. They don't have maps. They don't know exactly where the seas are going. It's all these kinds of, it's kind of chaos and fear is what the sea represents to the people John's writing to. And so when he says there's no sea, what is he saying in the new heaven and the new earth? There is no chaos. There is no fear. It's not supposed to be a place of worry, a place of destruction. Those things have passed away. It's a new place. And I think that John goes on a little bit later. He kind of describes it a little bit more of that place without fear and chaos. He says, God will wipe away every tear. No more crying. No more death. No more mourning. No more pain. Those things have passed away. And so all that's left, as I look at it, is peace. That's what he's describing here, is a place of peace. How many would want that in our lives? When we think about, is this my last day on earth? I want to be at peace with that question and have that tranquility as I look at that question. And so as he's describing this to us, he also then uses kind of another metaphor. Again, he uses these different pictures, and he says that the new heaven, new earth is like a bride beautifully prepared for her husband. Did you hear that image in there? A bride beautifully prepared. And that's one of the days I remember, is when Helen and I were married 15 years ago. I hadn't seen her in her dress, and she stepped out into that aisle, and her dad escorted her down to me, and she just looked beautiful. Just her hair was perfect. Everything was perfect as she came down there, and it was a wonderful day. But I was thinking, what if before that, if I had seen her and she said, hey, James, come here, and she's like, can you make sure my hair looks good? Can you touch up my makeup? Can you make sure the dress looks nice? I would have been no help at all. Yeah, there's nothing I could have done to help prepare her for our wedding day. I don't know anything about how to do hair or anything like that, or makeup I know even less about. And, you know, the dress, I don't know what to do with it. It's there. I wouldn't have been any help preparing her for our wedding day. There's nothing there that I could do. And that's what John is trying to describe to us here, is that as the new heaven and the new earth come, God is the one who has prepared it for us. God is the one who got the new heaven, the new earth ready. God did that work. All we do is we enter into it. We enter into God's peace because he's the one that has created that peace, and he's the one that prepared it, and we just enter into it. You see, so much of our life, though, I imagine, is trying to make peace. Do you know a lot of people that are trying to make peace? We're trying to get rid of the chaos. We're trying to make order. We're trying to organize things. We're doing all this work to get things in order because we're scared, we're worried. And God says, that's my work. I'll make it right. You just enter into the peace that I have for you. And see, that's the first thing I think of when I think of, what if this is my last day on this earth? I get worried. I get anxious. Did I accomplish everything I'm supposed to accomplish? Did I do all the work I'm supposed to do? Is everything in order? Am I ready? And John is saying that shouldn't be the thing that's there. We shouldn't have that worry and that anxiety to do the work. He said, God's already done it. God has prepared the new heaven, the new earth for you. God has prepared that peace for you. You just enter into it. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to strive for it. It is there. You just enter into it. And isn't that what our Christian faith is all about? Our Christian faith, so many of us, I think, as we come to it, we think, well, I got to get ready for God, right? I got to get clean. I got to get perfect. I got to get things in order. I got to get some discipline. I got to work at a few things, and then I can come to God. And the God of our Bible says, no, that's not it. You come to me. I do that work. You come to me. I'm making all things new. I'm making the new heaven, the new earth. You just enter into it. That's what grace is, right? And we are saved by God's grace. Grace is being given something that you haven't earned, that you haven't deserved, given something you haven't worked for. That's grace. And God offers us grace as he offers us the peace of this life that we can enter into. And so we need to stop working so hard for it and just enter it. God has done the work for us and says, come on in, enter into my peace. I have made it for you. Quit with all the working and the trying and the striving. It is a gift of God's grace given for you. And so that's what we need to remember about our faith is that we don't work for it. We just step into the Christian faith. We step into that relationship with God, and God welcomes us in because he's done the work to prepare the way for us to come into that. And it's so important for us to do that work, or to not do that work, but just to enter in and receive that peace that God gives to us. I asked Pastor Helen to share just a way this was really made real for her in her life.
Jordan Lee Graham was born June 17th, 1980. She was a beautiful redhead with a huge heart and a lot of spunk. Jordan was from my hometown of Crossville, Tennessee, so I watched her grow up. She was finishing her 8th grade year, and I became her youth pastor. Jordan was very involved in church. She was there every time we had youth group and was always helping with service projects, including VBS. The kids loved being around her, and she was a great role model for them. Jordan could be goofy and fun, but she also had her serious moments. She was a blessing to everyone that she met, but she didn't think she was loved. Even though she was active and involved, she still struggled with her self-worth. There were many times she would stop by my office and want to talk about why she was born and what was her purpose in life. No one knew the inner turmoil that she went through because she always had a smile on her face. She was loving and kind and beautiful inside and out. Jordan's sophomore year, she joined the flag corps in the high school marching band. She was very good at it, and she found a place where she could fit in, and I was happy that there was a place that she could shine. The summer after her sophomore year, our youth group took a retreat to the beach. I roomed with the senior high girls that included Jordan, and we had a very fun time. On our last night, we got all dressed up, and we went to a seafood restaurant right on the ocean. After that, we changed into casual clothes, and we went down to the beach to have worship. I had sent one of our adult volunteers ahead, and they had placed plastic bottles along the water's edge with a message in them. As we walked into the sand, I told the kids that in each bottle was a message from God, just for them. The letter basically shared how God had been waiting for them every day. He just wanted to spend time with them. It told about how great God's love was for them, that he created each of them for a purpose, and how he will keep waiting on them, hoping they choose to be in relationship with him. During our worship on the beach, Jordan, along with some other youth, accepted Christ into their lives. When she got on the bus ride back to Tennessee, she was a different person. There was an extra joy in her life, an extra peace in her life that could only come from God. When we got back to Crossville, she shared with others how she had accepted Christ into her heart. It was just a month later that I received the phone call that Jordan had been involved in a car accident. She was driving home from a day at band camp, and her car slid on a gravel road, and she hit a tree, and because she didn't have her seatbelt on, she was flung out. Jordan lived long enough for her family to donate her organs. I spoke at her funeral, which was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I sat up front and watched Jordan be carried in, her casket be carried in by my brother and other young men from the youth group. It sounds strange, but there was a peace to that day. A peace because we knew where Jordan was. A peace because we could celebrate Jordan's life knowing that she was in heaven. We even talked about that we pictured her up there twirling her flag with her red hair flowing. Jordan's life made a difference to so many. I will never forget her. The other kids from the youth group will never forget her, and that she accepted Christ into her heart. On a beautiful night in July of 1996, Jordan gave her life to Christ and lived like it was her last day on earth.
So a great reminder of how important it is for us to step in and to enter into that peace God offers to us. If we were all guaranteed our 28,000 days in our lives, we might live differently. But we're not guaranteed that, are we? We never know if we even have tomorrow. And so God calls us to remember to live each day as if it were our last. And so we want to continue to enter into the peace of God. And we also want to continue to live in a way that grows closer to Christ in that relationship as we continue to develop it. But I do want to just remind us all that it is that gift that God gives. It's because Jesus came, died for our sins, that we might be able to enter into that relationship and have that peace that God offers to us. And so we receive that peace. And I hope that if you haven't done that and you're here today, that you think about how to enter into that peace, which is just asking God, can I enter? And offering to give your life to Him, and He will walk with you each and every day of your life. And so we accept that and we enter into that peace. But also there's this piece of revelation that is a different kind of timing than a lot of us are used to. A lot of times we look at Revelation, I know a lot of people that say, well, that's coming in the future, right? This new heaven, this new earth is a future thing. But most of Revelation is a now and not yet type thing. That there is this not yet part of the new heaven, the new earth coming down, and there's something there that I don't understand how it's all going to work, but I trust God has that all figured out. But there's also a part of this book of Revelation that is a now thing, that we live in it now, in the new heaven and the new earth. I know some Christians that are just waiting for heaven. They're just waiting to get there, and I don't think that's what God calls us to just sit and wait, because in heaven is where everything will be. I think God says start living in that now. Because it happens when God dwells with His people. And I believe God dwells with us right now, doesn't He? We believe through the Holy Spirit that God dwells with us right now, so we can start living in that new heaven, that new earth. We've entered that peace already, and so we can live in that. And what John describes that as drinking the living water. And so we need to drink that living water. We need to take in what God offers to us in that peace, in that understanding, in that presence that God offers to us. We need to drink that in. And then this is the tension that I love in the scriptures. You'll learn that I'm all about tension. I don't like balance. Balance is kind of one or the other, but tension kind of pulls us back and forth, back and forth. And so the tension in this is, I said, you don't work for heaven, right? We don't work for that new heaven, that new earth. It's not our work to do. And yet when we enter it, we begin to participate in it. Right? We enter it and we don't just sit there once we've entered it. We enter it and then we participate in it. Again, it's not our work, but is what we do as we are in that peace that God has offered to us. And so as we drink in that water, we start to participate in the new heaven, the new earth. And so I believe God calls us to start wiping away the tears from the eyes of those who are crying. God calls us to be that peace that will walk into the lives of those who are hurting, those who are suffering. God calls us to go like the Haiti team did and take medicine and take doctors to those that need care. God calls us to start to live in that peace, in that new heaven and new earth. Again, He's done the work, but we just participate in it. And we live in that, offering that to those who are around us. And so that's our call. Once we've entered that peace, we start participating in that peace by giving it to those who are around us, especially those who haven't heard about having a relationship with Christ. They haven't heard the peace that they can have, that they continue to worry and become anxious about, what if this is my last day on earth? We want to take to them the peace of God that we have entered into and offer them what we can, a way to step into that themselves, to know that God will wipe their tears away, that God will care for them, that the new heaven and new earth is not yet, but it also can be now. We can have that peace that God offers to us as we drink of the living water that He wants to give to us. And so my challenge to you, or my invitation for this 1 week at least, each day when you wake up, think, what if today is my last day? God, what new thing do you have for me? How can I live this day to the fullest? And again, that doesn't mean how can I do the most work today? It means how can I know God's peace today as I go through my day? How can I notice someone else that doesn't have that peace, that I need to come alongside and wipe a tear from their eye, put an arm around their shoulder? Help me, God, to see those that might be worrying and anxious. They might be feeling the effects of the sea in their day today. And let me make this day the most for me as I live in peace and as I offer that peace to those who are around me. That's been kind of the main focus of my What If series this month, asking these questions to dream and to think. The main thing is to recognize this world is not all that there is. And this world isn't the thing that has everything for us, that we want to look to the one who offers us the new heaven and the new earth. That God had hoped so much more for his creation. He's going to make it new, but for now we just live in his peace and participate in that as we live each and every day to the fullest. Let us pray. Gracious God, I thank you that you are the one who has prepared the new heaven and the new earth for us. And it's not work for us to do, that we have to worry if we have everything in order or everything perfect, that we just enter into the peace that you have prepared for us. Lord, I pray for any person here this morning that maybe hasn't found that peace, that the question of what if this is my last day really brought some fear and anxiety to their heart. Lord, help them to seek out that living water you offer. Help them to realize they don't have to work for it. They just enter into the peace that you have given through Jesus Christ. Lord, and guide them to talk with someone and how to take that step and just be open to receive your Holy Spirit. Lord, I pray for that person now, that you might speak clearly to their heart, that they are loved, that they can have this peace that you give. And for those of us who have done that before, Lord, help us to be mindful and remember that we have entered that peace and that we can live each day offering that peace to others around us because we live in the new heaven and new earth. Lord, continue to pour your water through us into the lives of those around us. We pray all of this in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen.